All right, Mike. So I mean, my whole business has been shaped by the pumpkin plan. Listened to it over and over again several years ago, probably what, 7 years ago. How long ago did you write this?
Oh, I think it may go back about 12 years now,
12 years.
the
Yeah.
book.
So I think I found it about 7 years ago. And like I said, I think our business is a great prodigy. And one of the things we try to help our clients with is, really have that discipline and that courage to only work with clients they love. And
Mm.
I find that just to be a really counterintuitive thought or almost luxury for a small business owner who's just trying to grow. So you want to talk about why you thought that was so important and how you've seen businesses use that as an accelerator and not a problem?
For sure. Yeah, I grew up in business the same way. There's that saying, the customer's always right. So the assumption was any customer is a good customer and cater to all their unique needs. But my business has always got stunted, Jeremy. At a certain point, I couldn't grow and it was frustrating. There wasn't really a number associated with it. Sometimes it was when I hit 1 million, sometimes it was at three, sometimes it was at 500,000. Like it just all of a sudden stopped. And my reaction was, oh, I got to sell my way out of this. You and I are both part of the EO lineage and community. I know you're still active. I've left. But what's so interesting is the pounding drumbeat is top line consideration. What's your revenue look like? How big is your business? And it kind of wires in this assumption that bigger is better. But what happens is many businesses, including myself, would throw spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks, and try it out. If a new client came in with a new need and was within the purview of what I do, I said, okay, I'll do that too. And I kept on expanding out my service offering. I also fell victim to, if that's the right word, the concept that a captive customer is your best customer. If they already need you, give them more because they already trust you. But the problem is it forces us to diversify our offering. And with diversity comes variability. There's a classic manufacturing concept that if I made, say, I got a coffee mug here on my desk. So say I make a coffee mug. If I make it in one color, it's like the Ford Model T. You can get any color car you want as long as it's black. I make one mug, one size. Well, that goes through my system. The variables are very much in control. But the second I introduce, say, two sizes and two colors, it's not double the problem, it's quadruple because I now have a red mug that can be small or a red mug that's black, a black mug that's small, black one that's black, and et cetera, et cetera. And now when I have one problem, it causes a cascade of other problems. Well, we can't make red. It means we can't do small. But if we can't do small, we have to go all black. It causes confusion. Efficiency in manufacturing, and this is true for all businesses, comes out of reducing variability. The fewer things you do better, the more replicatable it is, the fewer resources you need, the faster you can get done, and the more you become an expert at those few things. So if you could just make black mugs, make it. Now, here's the funny thing in manufacturing, maybe you can't just make a black mug, but often in businesses like we do, there is one type of customer with one type of need, and there's such a volume of those types of customers. We just need to identify who those customers are and cater with our one solution to them. There could be thousands or hundreds of thousands of customers available for solving that one need. You become more efficient, you become expert at what you do. There's also another benefit is when you cater to one customer one way and you can solve their problem expertly at a higher level than anybody else, your reputation precedes you. Birds of a feather flock together. Those customers start to talk about you and spread the word. It is niche specialization. It is the 80-20 rule. But when I've deployed it in my businesses, and I also now have been investing in businesses, we go right to this principle every single time. And I see two things. Business grows faster, profitability grows faster too, and the expenses start decreasing. The definition of scale is to get more results with less input. The definition of growth is more results with more input. Most businesses are trying to grow, do more, do more, do more. Businesses that truly scale are doing fewer things better, less resources, and getting far better results.
I like how you outline the difference between grow and scale there, because they are two different things.
Yeah, and a lot of people say I'm scaling my business, and I got these little devil horns that peek out every time. I'm like, "Oh, you're scaling? Tell me how you're doing." Like, "Oh, we're hiring more people. We're introducing new services." I'm like, "You're definitely not scaling. That's the reverse of scale."
That's great. Yeah. Definitely been victim of that many times, as you
Yeah, me
said.
too.
So yeah, but I mean, I think that everybody loves the way that sounds, but like most things in life, they often takes the courage to get it done. And small business owners, we like to consider ourselves rational people, although we would have never started a small business if we were rational people. But we like to make rational decisions, right? And so I've heard the argument a million times, and I've felt the argument a million times. It's like, hey, I had this one type of customer, and I look around, and the only way for me to grow, again, not scale, is I need to sell those people more things, or I need to start customizing my service because I'm losing deals because they want, the extra large red cup
Yeah.
instead of the red cup. And
Yeah.
so I've tried, Mike. I've talked to everybody. The only
Doesn't
people there
work.
is
Yeah.
the people that want the extra large. So what would you say to that?
Well, I use an analogy because this really drives it home, and then we can talk about it as applied to anyone's business. But think about a doctor. Imagine you have a life-threatening situation, say a heart attack or something, and you rush to the hospital, and two doctors come out of their office. Doctor one says, "Yeah, I'd love to see if I can help you with your heart situation." In fact, I experiment with a lot of things. I'm also into geriatrics. I think that's kind of interesting. I want to be a neurosurgeon. Pediatrics is interesting, and just general practicing. So I'm trying a lot of things. Would you like me to help you? Now, think about Doctor Two. She comes out and she says, all I do is heart surgery. I specialize in this. Actually, I charge a premium for it. The exact situation you have, I've done 1,000 times over, and I have a 99% success rate. I don't do anything else but heart surgery. Who do you choose? I hope you choose Doctor Two, because they have the best possibility of getting it right. And that's who we want to choose when our life is on the line. And value or cost, I should say, doesn't matter. If Dr. Chu says, Dr. One says, I'll do 50% off special today, you're like, no, I want someone who's going to charge me for what they do. And I wish they're very profitable. So they have no other worries besides just addressing my current circumstances. Now, when we translate this to business, people say, but I don't do life-saving services. Oh, you don't? You provide life-altering services for the right customer. Most customers are not in a heart attack situation. I would say this is the Pareto principle. 80% of customers just want general cheap. They're the Walmart shoppers. And this is true in any industry. Any customer base has 80% that are just the generic Walmart shoppers. But then you have 20% that are the Nordstroms. They want the best service, the best experience, because they see this service as critical to their life experience, to maybe a subsequent service they're providing, or whatever it is. You want to pursue those customers. They are willing to pay a significant premium. They see the inherent value in being an expert, and they will qualify you based upon your ability to prove that you've done this before historically and are very successful. They do it by asking other customers for referrals. They may interview you and so forth. So you have a choice. And I'm not saying either path is wrong, but if you're a generalist, you'll attract a general audience that is generally looking for a convenience purchase and generally won't pay more than the industry average or less. They want the Walmart. Conversely, if you're a specialist, you're going to find special customers who realize you need to charge a special price for the special services that you provide, and they will seek you out globally. You break out of this generalization like who's convenient, and they say who's quality.
That's great. And I've definitely experienced that. I just absolutely think that it takes a bit of faith, for lack of a more technical word, to believe that if you are the specialist and the heart surgeon, that there's enough people out there with the issue to keep busy. Because I think that's
classic,
the
yeah.
rational thing. It's like, well, what if there's not enough of those people out there? But and I don't want to bait you too much, but often we make that decision as small business owners without having had the opportunity to use that specialist messaging in the marketplace and see what that brings us. We're basically using a generalist messaging, and then we're viewing the world as, oh, well, everybody just wants the Walmarts. Like, that's all I come in contact with.
It's a classic self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You will see what you seek, and therefore you'll validate. It's a natural cognitive bias. It's wired into all of us. Whatever you believe to be true, the information exists to validate your belief. So it does take a leap of faith to say, this is perhaps an alternative path that may be better. Now, here's the thing. You have to make a leap of faith in any capacity, you have to be more afraid of your current path than the fear of making that leap. So many people are just comfortable in the uncomfortable. They say, listen, it's not perfect, and I'm always learning something new, and customers are coming and churning, and I don't know why it's happening, but at least I have some revenue. I'm not living the lifestyle I necessarily want, but if I just keep working harder, maybe I'll get there. That's living in the uncomfort. So what we do with people that the business that we invest in, we say, let's not ditch all of our existing customers. Let's go through a specific strategy. First, we are going to ditch one or two customers to see actually the gains you get by firing unfit customers. And what I mean by this is there's certain customers that are never happy. They bitch and moan. They threaten. They wait until you get this review they're going to put online about how horrible you are, and they don't pay their bills on time or just don't pay them. They're actually costing us to keep them. They're the real kind of low, they're not low life, but for us, they're low lives. There may be a great customer or a great person elsewhere, but not for us. We have to first have the courage to fire them. What's so interesting is often we see a profitability boost because it's not requiring us to spend superfluously and on these needs that we don't satisfy for other people, so we can get rid of those costs. But the other major gain that happens immediately is the emotional weight goes away. A lot of business owners don't sleep well at night because they're worrying about that nasty customer, that one is always frustrated and always complaining. So the emotional weight goes away. It then frees up that time, that emotional time spent, but also your resource time to now focus and find the good clients. So we usually get rid of one or two unfit clients, and then we go out and seek the best clients. How we seek them, and this is a real simple system, is you go to your existing best clients and remember the adage that birds of a feather flock together. So you ask them, hey, where else do people like you hang out? Where do you learn about what you do? Where do you socialize? And you start marketing in those arenas. And now you start finding clients like your best customer. The last thing I want to share, just because I've done it so many times with businesses, it always surprises me how business just magically appears when you make space for it. And here's probably the reality. Business is going by you that you don't even see because you're so head down in serving your existing client base. When you get rid of a few unfit customers, now you can have a heads up purview and you'll start seeing opportunities that present themselves that have actually always been there.
Good share on that. Tactically sitting down, I love that you use the doctor analogy. I'm kind of thinking, asking through the questions I hear. If I'm going into med school, you've got all the paths laid out for you. Do you want to work on, bones? You want to work on blood? Whatever it is, work on brains. It's real clear in hindsight. But for most of us in a small business, we're inventing the category or we're inventing the specialist. And I know your story and how, you're like, well, I'm in IT, but then I realized that I'm actually not just in IT. I'm in IT for this kind of provider.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part, and this is where, when you're in the day-to-day and you're an operator, it's hard to find space for that. Like, let me create something brand new. Any advice or exercises on somebody going through this, property manager, like you said, they're missing the business that's walking by them because they've got blinders on or their head is down. How do we start to just really say, hey, this is actually who my ideal client is, and this is what I need to say so that those people hear the dog whistle and know I'm talking to them?
For sure. The first thing is to acknowledge this behavior exists, that there is a certain quality customer that's specifically seeking the quality care, the high level care. How to acknowledge this is you look at your own consuming behavior. Perhaps, likely, the majority of things you buy, it's based upon convenience. I need a pen. And so I just want to hop on Amazon or drive down to the local store and pick one up. It's a convenience purchase. But you have to also acknowledge that there are these weirdos who are pen collectors that go to these collection events to buy pens at a premium. But we all have this kind of weirdo behavior. For me, it's guitars. I'm not going to shop a convenient guitar at the local guitar center. I'm going to go out of my way to the elite store to get exactly what I want. And we all have those tendencies, whatever perhaps hobbies or interests you have, we go for the elite. So once you understand that you don't do this for all purchasing, but a certain purchasing, then what we can do is make the bridge and understand that in our space, there's probably customers that see that same kind of value and go out of their way for the elite. Now, how you do it, another technique of doing it to find these people or help them find you is talk to your best customers, find out where they congregate. We already mentioned that. But there's this really cool kind of under the ground, most effective mechanism. And I call it the vendor well. What this is, when I started my IT business, I was a generalist and the business grew to about 1 point something and I could not get past it. I was not making money. I shouldn't say I was taking money. The business was making money, but I wasn't taking anything. Then I realized, my best customers, a few of them are hedge funds, just by chance. I didn't even actually know what a hedge fund was. So I said, I'm going to double down on this. Well, I called my hedge fund client and said, who else serves you, not IT wise, but outside of this industry? I want to know what hedge funds depend on. He said, oh, trading desk manufacturers are very important. I was like, I had no idea. Clearing houses, basically the bank for banks, very important. I had no idea. Once I found out who the critical relationships were, I called upon those vendors. So I called the vendor well. And I said, hey, Bear Stearns is a clearinghouse. I said, I work with some hedge funds, and I understand you work with hedge funds. What can I do in my work with my existing clients that actually makes your job easier? So what I started to do was not ask for referrals from these vendors. I sought out ways to be of service to those vendors. Well, very quickly they caught on. My God, you're the only IT company that calls us to say, how can I help you have a better experience serving the clients you serve? So they, no surprise, called me later on and said, hey, we have a new hedge fund that's starting up. And they asked if we know any IT folks. We enjoy so much how you're caring for us. Would you want this hedge fund? I'm like, yeah. And so I started getting referrals from the vendor network. It is the most untapped resource. And the last thing is when you put your name out there that I'm a IT firm for hedge funds, I'm a property manager for a specific type of property investor. When you put that out there, you become very Googleable or now chat GPTable or however you would say that. You'll be found. And I'm always shocked how little competition there is. This is a blue ocean strategy. You've now entered a field where no one else is out there. So you instantly come to the top of the list, which is a great form of authority, recognition, social proof when you're top of list and you have a reputation with other vendors and your clients already exist in this space, a handful that are referring you out. You very quickly, overnight, become the authority of that space and business comes lapping in. One last tip, I find you got to stick with this. When I say overnight seems to be 12 to 18 months of sticking to it before that flywheel gets up to speed.
Yeah, that's a really solid point there. It's too easy if, again, you see what you look for, and it's very easy to dismiss stuff if it doesn't work right away. But I mean, just in general, principle of my life is any big thing I ever do, I expect it to pay off in 5 years. And if the horizon
So
is long
smart.
enough, it always works out, right?
Yeah, it's so smart. That's what they say. Overnight successes take 10 or 15 years. And that's the absolute truth.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've worked with a lot of businesses that said they want to commit to a niche. They see the value logically, but they abandon it after a few months. They say, it's not working. No one's responding to me. You aren't around enough. Could you imagine a doctor comes out of school and says, I'm the world's elite heart surgeon? No, they run an apprenticeship for like 5 to 10 years, running in parallel to the established leading heart surgeons so they can really get attuned. And who would go to someone that just came out of school and said, yeah, I want you to do my life-saving surgery? We want that same apprenticeship. And customers will recognize that when you've been around for a while.
Yeah, I want to say on that too, Mike. Having gone through that a few times myself and having worked with clients doing this, one of the gotchas to watch out for is the stick-to-itiveness is something the entrepreneur has to have. And I just want to warn people, the first people that are going to tell you it's not working are your smartest employees. And that's what's going to make it really hard, right? And that's why they're employees and not the business leader, because the first people that will tell you it's not working are the people you think you should be listening to. But this is by its very nature hard to do, right? So I just want to
sure. Because listen, they have all humans don't like change, even though we say we do. That's why many of us stick with the uncomfortable. And same thing with your colleagues. They're familiar with the process and they'll notice when the process is changing and there may be even subconscious resistance to it and they want to push back to the process.
Yeah.
So you have to see, that's why we're visionaries. You have to see the 3 to 5 year plan and stay the course. Overcoming that resistance is absolutely necessary and it will happen in many forms.
That's why I wanted to say that, because for anybody reading this or watching this, I want them to know that by its very nature, this is going to take longer than you think it's going to be. It's going to seem scary, but by design, once you get to the other side, it looks very different. I want to comment on what you said, Mike. You mentioned the vendors, and I want to point out, kind of for my audience that everyone's like, they heard that and they were surface level because property managers for years have gotten a ton of business from people in the real estate field. So they're like, as long as I talk to real estate agents, I'm getting business. But you said you talk to your clients and you would say something like, which agents do you work with? And I bet it's very different. And then you serve them. And I know, just to take one example, a client of mine was working with, very ambitious real estate investors. They probably all use the same attorneys. They probably all use the same lenders. They might bank with the same people, right? And it's not just, oh, I talked to an attorney maybe these guys are the guys that set up real estate trusts. Maybe there's a specialist in your town that just does, LLCs for real estate holdings. Go meet that person. And like you said, I love what you said. How can I help you serve your clients better?
Yeah, it's these unexpected relationships. I'll give you something in the real estate space. It was with an agent, and we were developing a strategy, and they said, I want to be the authority in our community. Now, of course, they're buying and selling homes. And I said, well, what makes you an authority? They said, if you can pack open houses, if you can get tons of people coming, you start building a reputation that you can draw traffic. And what everyone does is they put a sign outside. If they go crazy, they put some balloons on it. I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the vendor network. I said, when someone's considering, in this example, buying a house, what do they consider? The location, the crime rate, the school district, and the quality of schooling and so forth. I said, okay, let's get the mayor in. Let's get the chief of police in. Why don't we get the head of the school, the principal in, and we're going to do an open house where you get to actually meet the town leaders. So now the announcement is about this open house, meet the town leaders. Well, not only people seeking it for houses, but the entire town shows up. They had lines around the block, and nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. This real estate agent got a reputation for packing these open houses, had now strategic relationships with the leading people in those communities. And you're not going to be surprised, their reputation preceded them. They got tons of business. If you wanted to be in the know, her name was Jane, you work with Jane. So we have to think of the same way as there's clearly obvious vendor connections, but sometimes it's the less than obvious ones that are going to be your best source of opportunity.
That's perfect. All right, I feel great about that one. I think it's a great place to. That article's art. The hardest thing about print, Mike, is like we're gonna have to fit that in like 2 pages.
Yeah.
I'm blown
AI,
away
baby,
by.
AI it.
I know, well, but I'm blown away by how they do distill it down into the best things that you said.
It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll send it to you, which is good. But
Okay.
that's amazing. That's exactly what I needed.
Good.
So I want to transition into what I think is this great idea. First of all, listen, I'm a consultant. I love a good triangle visual. I mean, it's just, is that what they teach us? Or are we just like
Yeah,
genetic
triangles and Venn diagrams. It's the two
upside
things.
down pyramid or triangle diagram? That's all. That's
Yeah.
what we do. So I love this, the kind of, was it the business hierarchy of needs? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, I renamed it to the business priority pyramid. And I put in the book that way. The reason is hierarchies, people think they climb. Pyramids, priority pyramid specifically, you realize that a priority can shift, that a pyramid is a structure that stays permanently, but your priority will shift. So that's why we changed it. It's being received better that way.
So this is still the graphic though, right?
Yeah, still exact same graphic. Yeah, the business priority pyramid. Yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect. So I'll just kind of leave that up for the writers and anybody that gets to watch this. We publish the videos too. What I thought this was great because I this really want to focus on is, you just got back from the biggest conference in my industry and you just walk down vendor row and you got 150 companies telling you the next thing you should do is X, right? And I always,
right.
25 years as an entrepreneur, Mike, when I try to do our consultants or diagnostics, I really focus on what do you do next? And maybe you indoctrinated me with fix this next, but I think as a business owner, the most important clarity you can get is what do I do next? I mean, by very definition, that's the name of priority. We're just saying what a principle that's been around for 1,000 years. We're just calling it fancy names, right?
Yeah.
But we all have more than we can do, right? Strategy is unlimited options, but limited resources. What do you do? And so correct me if I'm wrong, but when I looked at that and the fix this next concept, I just loved it. And what I did see also, and I don't want to be speaking my own book because obviously we're a sales consulting and coaching company. We do find that everybody's like, I shouldn't invest in any sales and marketing because my processes aren't perfect. And what happens if I run an ad on a Tuesday and 500 people call on a Friday, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. And I say, we would be so lucky to be that good.
Yeah.
But, just kind of walk us through why you created it and kind of how you look at it and how people can kind of understand what they should fix next.
Yeah. So the business priority pyramid is a translation from Maslow's hierarchy when it came to human needs. But I found that most entrepreneurs, myself included, follow a very specific process to problem resolution. And it's usually what's called closest to hand or closest in hand. Secondly, linear progression. And then lastly, it comes about through problem identification. Here's the way to explain this. If there was a chain between me and you, you can tell I'm in Jersey by the way I'm dressed today. You're in Florida. It's cold here, warm there. But say we have this massive chain between the two of us, and our job is to make it stronger. The entrepreneurial path is first to look at closest or in hand. And what we do is we look at the links in our hand and say, if I want to make this chain stronger, I have this in my hand. Let me start working on these chains. It's convenient. It's in front of us, but it won't fix the chain. It won't make it stronger because the chain will always break at the exact same spot, the weakest link. Wherever that weakest link is, it's going to keep snapping there. So you can make every other link so massively strong and it keeps on snapping. The second approach is then what's called linear progression. Well, this is in hand. It didn't fix it. I'm going to start going down the chain links, but there's millions of chain links between us. I'm going to keep progressing and it's going to keep on snapping until it gets to the weakest link. So the last technique is to identify the specific weak point. I call it the vital need in business, but what's the current weak point? Identify that first, then fix just one link. So don't touch anything else. Fix one link and the entire chain now is stronger to the next weakest link. Then we pinpoint that, resolve that, and the chain becomes rapidly stronger by this process. So the business priority pyramid is a technique of evaluating where the business has its biggest need, weakest link, in the moment. And most people default to what's in hand. I got increased sales, right? Because sales are close to me. I just got to sell my way out of this. That's rarely the right link. It could be, but rarely is. Others just say, I got to get everything efficient. We got to build more and more SOPs when the entire time it's actually profitability that's the issue or something else. So this business priority pyramid starts foundationally with what we all need. We need sales, but you only need an adequate base to support the next level. In fact, some businesses will, in this case, oversell. We sell so much that now it dilutes our ability to care for the customers at the highest level, and the business kind of crumbles on itself. Our reputation sinks. So the golden rule of moving through this business priority pyramid is the base below the level you're considering adequate to support the level you're considering? Once it's adequate, we keep on moving up. Once we find something where there's an inadequacy, that's where our vital need is. We resolve that. Once that's resolved, that weak link is now a strong link. We go back to the bottom. We start going through the process again to identify where's the next weak link. We ping pong around the business for its entirety of addressing sales or efficiency or profitability or impact, which is transformation of clients, or legacy, our future.
Let me just jump in. I'll share that again because I think it's great. And just a simple analogy to make sure I'm understanding this right and helping the audience. I think that's so great. It's like, if you say, I'm going to set out to start a business tomorrow, it would be futile to start working on your profit if you have 0 customers.
Exactly.
But you might say, okay, well, let me go get 5 customers or 50 customers, depending on the business model. And let me make sure that people want to buy what I sell. And let me make sure that I can price it at a point that people want to buy it. And then I'll be like, okay, when I'm done with that, let me look back and say, wow, that was great. I made $50,000 and I spent $75,000. That's probably not going to scale, right? And so you'll basically say, okay, well, maybe instead of 50 meetings, I'll cut it down to 10, and then you fix that while you again hopefully have another 5 or 50 clients coming in, and you're just ping ponging like you said. And then you're basically saying, okay, well, now I'm not sleeping at night, so I need to move on order, and you're fixing that. Like, is that a good, kind of?
Yeah, you're nailing it. How we're moving. That's exactly. This is a living or dynamic process where you keep moving around. There's a concept that was popularized, I think, by Eric Ries called the MVP, or minimum viable product. And a lot of entrepreneurs say, I'm starting a new business. What's my minimum viable product to see if there's demand for it? I actually identify there's a step before it. We call it the sell the tell. Is can you make an offer without creating anything and have customers commit to it? So it's basically, would you buy this? Or I have this idea, would you consume it? But there's a special caveat to this. When you ask people if hypothetically they do something, they want to ingratiate with you. So of course they say, yes, I would support that. Hypothetically, it's an amazing idea. That is the worst advice you'll ever get, because that's not the truth of their behavior. I was saying, don't trust people's words, only trust their wallets. What I mean by this is I do a sell to tell. I say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a property management company, and this is the kind of elements that we were considering having. Would this be of interest to you? And if so, put down a deposit of a amount, 50 or 5,000, whatever the appropriate number is for a deposit. It is shocking how that changes I would totally buy that to the I am ready to buy that. Once I get those deposits, now I say, okay, I've received your deposit. I'm deploying a minimum viable product. I don't use those terms necessarily, but an MVP. I'm deploying it, and I'm going to charge you to deliver the services. Are we okay to proceed? They say yes. They get feedback on the MVP, and they start building up. And I start this ping pong around. wherever it may be. Now moving back to sales. Now people are consuming this. Maybe I got to sell more aggressively. Now that I have a little bit increasing demand, I got to make sure I'm supporting profitability, which is sustainability. Once I have that, I may be focusing on order, being efficiency in the organization, and so forth.
It's funny. Some of these concepts are so easy to nod your head yes to when you're starting a brand new business and you have no prejudices, no sacred cows, nothing there.
Right, right, right.
This book is even more beneficial for the guy or gal who's 5 years into their business or 9 months in, and maybe they're out of whack. That's what I even
Totally.
like. I think we all look at that and be like, yeah, if I ever start a new business, I'll do it that way. But for the person who's, got, they're 60 clients in, how do they kind of identify where that weak link is and what should they be doing to take action on this?
Yeah. Maybe I'll share it through a story. I invested in a jewelry retail store and just talk with the owners. It's a couple actually owns the store. And you first talk about the vision. There's got to be vision alignment. So when there's partners, what's the vision? And if there's an inconsistency there, is there at least a consistency for a period of time? Are we walking the same path? If there's a divergence immediately, that's always going to be conflict. So that's something to consider. In this case, the one owner wants to take over the world, locations everywhere. The other owner wants a lifestyle business. The business fuels me. In both cases, a business that operates in their absence supports either vision. If this one retail store can operate in their absence, we can clone that franchise model. So that's taking over the world. And the other owner can live a lifestyle because the business doesn't depend on them. So do we have a similar path? Once we have that vision, we then say, what is the biggest impedance to get there? So this comes from manufacturing theory. There's a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. It's an amazing read. Every business should read this because every business ultimately manufactures something. We take raw ideas or raw input, we go through service or process or manufacturing, and then we have a different output. So there's a before and after for all of our businesses. That's what manufacturing is. And Eli Goldratt in his book talked about this concept called TOC, or theory of constraints. What he explains is in a process, wherever things wait and pile up is likely the bottleneck. And there can only at any given time be one biggest bottleneck. So the things before the bottleneck, maybe there's slowdowns, but if the bottleneck that we're talking about is the biggest one, stuff will pile up before it because it's waiting for that process to be done. Yeah. And after it, there'll be all this waiting around saying, where's the stuff? So we look for not piles of inventory or materials, we look for piles of time. So we were going through this business and we said, where do things wait the most? And what we identified is when there's a merchandising change, we move jewelry around the store and stuff, it has to also be reflected on the website. Most of the purchases that customers are making, they look at the website, they navigate around, and they come in for the final decision. So the website has to reflect what's on the shelves. And what we're waiting for is the owner to redo the website, which is often weeks behind the stocking of the shelves and the reorganization and the new jewelry to sell. And then the website takes 2 weeks later. So when people make a decision online, they come in, the product may not even be there. So there's frustration. Mm-hmm. And sometimes products change so quickly that when the website's updated, products have changed again. So there's this constant frustration. So we said, okay, that's where the biggest time pile is. People are coming in and they can't purchase because they spent all this time researching. We got to make that efficiency happen. So it's so obvious now we're outsourcing the website. And it's like, oh, it's a no-brainer. The key also is that we must resolve this fully before we move on to the next thing. So a lot of business owners say, well, clearly I need a web designer. Okay, done. What's next? No, it's not done because it hasn't been executed on. So the thought isn't enough. We have to have now the resolution in place and on the path to permanently working in the absence of the owner. Then we identify where the next time pile is.
Oh, perfect. I think that's so great because you're right. So a lot of the conversations we have when we talk to some of our clients, they're like, okay, I know what I do. I'm a good property manager. I got my systems in place. That's just what, that's the nature of this business and they've got it all. Yeah. And so then they just kind of look around and say, all I need is more leads. I just need more leads, right? And that's just such an easy thing to say because they believe that if, the top of the funnel has more leads, then they'll have more sales, then everything will work. But the thing is as we've learned, if you've been in marketing at all, there's not a lot of diet pills out there for leads, not a lot of magic wands. You know what I mean? If it's easy to pay for, if it's easy to buy, then the price goes up, right? Like Google Ads is the hyper, visual model of that. We used to be able to we used to bid on any word for 2 cents, right? Now that same word in 2002 that you could bid on for 2 cents, if it's the right term, it might be $190 per click, right? That's just the way the market it goes. So I think that's just a great point. Everybody just thinks I just need more leads, and then they call these marketing agencies, and you've been
Yeah.
through it, and they're just looking for that diet pill. And then the answer
Yeah.
is usually like, well, you know what? Lead generation is actually a lot of work. You need
It can be a lot of
your
work.
brand, you
I'll
need
tell you
good
the number one
content.
form of lead generation is a reputation for excellence. I mean, think about the companies we buy from. Um, Chances are a lot of your purchases, when it came to a critical decision, you asked someone else saying, hey, do you know anyone that's excellent in this space? Did your research? Some of the most famous companies today, you probably didn't find them through an ad. You probably didn't hear Amazon through an ad for the first time. Someone probably recommended it to you. First time you used an Uber, probably wasn't because you saw an ad saying, try our car. Someone's like, dude, you got an Uber. It's amazing. It's usually reputation. And then advertising builds that ongoing brand awareness. And there's some behavioral mechanisms about top of mind in the moment when people make a buying decision just to get in front of them again. But when it comes to critical purchases, it's usually reputation. So I would argue most businesses are seeking leads, but don't have a reputation that deserves quality leads. And therefore they get quantity leads and are frustrated that all these people suck. The lead flow is so bad. Well, is your reputation such that only the best will come to you? So I encourage people to focus in on that more. And to your point, when it comes then to the process of creating leads, that is too a process. And we need to go through it just like we would anything else with this business priority pyramid and say, where is it getting stuck? Where is the failure point? What's that weakest link in our, in this case, lead process? Let's resolve that, see how we're doing, find the next weak link in the lead process and continue on.
Great. Last kind of closing thoughts on that. Appreciate your time on this.
That's been fun.
What are some of the other mistakes that people might make with this hierarchy of process and needs? What blind spots do you see over and over again?
I think many jump to legacy and the impact level right away and say, I got sales figured out. I got stuff figured out. You may have had it figured out for your size business a year or 6 months ago, but do you have it figured out now for the current business? There's constant change. The legacy phase is not about how am I going to transfer this estate to my heirs or whatever. Legacy really is about how's this business designed to run in my complete absence into perpetuity. Then you have choices you can make, and it can become part of your estate technically. But how do you make this business a permanent presence? One of my favorite stories is I met with a coffee company, and I saw the owner, and I said, what does it feel like to own this business? And he said, I don't own the business. I said, I'm totally confused because we just spent 2 days together about how you own a business. He said, yeah. Because I realize I am not an owner, I'm a steward of the business. You see, people come to my coffee shop and they are connecting at levels they've never connected before. There is an intimacy. It's a place where people can be present with each other. I've created something where people are getting off the screens. And he goes, that is something that has to live on forever because we're addicted to screens. Once there's massive purpose in your business beyond the generation of revenue and profitability, and there's impact to your community, and you have this realization, oh, your job isn't to own a business now, it's to facilitate a shift in souls, a shift in society. That's when you achieve legacy. Many people try to skip that stage without getting the fundamentals right. That's one common thing. And the second thing I see that's often a mistake is the entrepreneur believes they need to do the work. So I have a really simple saying. The number one job of an entrepreneur is not to do the job, it's to be a creator of jobs. If you look back at your kindergarten class, how the stats run out, about 3% of kids will attempt to start a business and have it sustainable for an ongoing period where it can support employment of other people. Which means if a class had 25 kids in it, one kid, that's you, started that business, the other 24 kids are looking for good jobs with good companies to live a good life and to be of good service. Like we're looking for that. If we're doing the work in the business, we're actually stealing the jobs from all those other kids that are looking for good jobs. So our job is not to do the work, it's to create the opportunity for others to do the work. That's where we need to focus our attention. So if you catch yourself doing the work, that's a problem. We got to extract you from the business of doing.
Well said. Yeah, that's not entrepreneurship. That's self-employment.
It's self-employment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Mike, I've enjoyed the time as I always do. Now I know, we'll probably still have some discussion, but you're really good at vision and core messaging. People that are going to come see you speak at the summit, what are you excited to share with them?
Oh, I can't wait to get there. I think what people are going to hear are a couple of things. One are highly actionable ideas. I don't like to talk theory. I like to give the theory, but tell you how to apply it. I think you're going to find ways to find those ideal clients that you've been seeking. Kind of touched on some of it today, but there's more to it. You're going to find a process I call client cloning, a very strategic way to identify your best clients, and it's not how you think it works, and then how to clone them. I think business owners are going to also come away entertained, and the reason I think that's important is you can hear a professor give really logical stuff out, but you can fall asleep in class. So I'm going to share some stories that I think you're going to find a lot of fun. And when we have fun and when we're entertained, we absorb. So it may be a little edutainment or whatever they call it that you're experiencing. And no matter what, within 24 hours, that presentation, assuming you deploy tactics, and I'm going to make it such a low bar for folks, you will see results in your business. And my hope is once you start seeing results, then you become addicted to a new approach of growing your business, a better approach, in my opinion.
I promise everybody, if you know Rentscale, I did not bait Mike. We call it edutainment all the time. That's how
Oh,
we,
you really? Okay.
anyone who's been to our events, last event for the salespeople had confetti cannons and all kind of, and like we put buzzers in the audience. And then when they heard an idea, they buzzed it. We had no clue when we're on stage when the confetti cannon was going to go off. So it was great. But you were highly entertaining, and I've learned so much from you over the years. So much of my business is shaped on that, and so much of what we teach our clients are shaped on that. So I'm glad to connect, everybody to the source, which will be amazing.
I cannot wait for the event.